Welcome back, everyone. Snapping around episode 5 here tonight. And guys, we touched on, I believe, last pod. Again, one of these days I will get this system figured out. I think that's back to back weeks now. I've had the intro music play as I'm talking. But no, I think the Avs were winless the last time we touched base here, guys. And now they have 3 wins. And given our history of predictions, Trav, got to shout you out for predicting the other night's Seattle game right on 3-2 win for the boys.
Yeah, that's 1 in a million.
Yeah, pretty much with our records. So, but no, I mean, what do we think here, guys, with the Avs? Like, Trav, you and I were talking before we jumped on here that they got one. Once they kind of got one, they've just started rolling, and it started to get just a little easier to play. Is this just one where monkeys off their back now, and just how they've won some of these games, it's a little easier to breathe in that dressing room?
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly it. The writing was kind of on the wall. They just needed to kind of get their feet under them to get going. Like I said in one of the previous episodes, like this team's too good to not be in the playoffs. Like they're a top end team in the West still, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, like we talked, I think last week too. We've touched lots on goaltending with this team. Like Justin, is it shocking that Anunen's kind of got back-to-back wins here with only allowing 3 goals, or is this one where the Bednar finally gave him a start and not just threw him in cold halfway through a game, and he's showing that he is actually very capable of being at least a 1B goalie in this league?
Yeah, I think for sure he can be a 1B goalie eventually. I still not sure if he's ready for that sort of workload because he hasn't really seen that yet at this level. He's done it with the Eagles and he's performed fine, but Bednar, I don't think he really had a choice even after the win against Anaheim. Like Gorgiev was still 3 goals on 20 shots is still not good enough, especially when, you have 50. But it's good that they finally found some stability. And like guys have said it in interviews that, they feel comfortable and confident with him back there. So you got to keep riding the wave. Like he gives another start tonight against Utah. So I'm not sure exactly what like long term this season the goal is right now, but just got to ride the hot hand, maybe see what Kakkonen can do for you, and then eventually go back to Gorgiev. And I mean, if he has a stinker, I don't know what you do with him.
I mean, we saw it here last year in Toronto, like Samsonov just couldn't get a win, or if he got a win, it was because the team in front of him dragged the win out of it. But like you said, like that confidence is playing in front of a goalie. The Avs they were playing like really good hockey in front. Yeah, they had defensive laps here and there, but just how some of those goals, like just squeaker goals, backbreaking goals would go in, and you just saw it. You could see the Avs deflate for about a 5-minute stretch. And in the NHL, no matter who the team is, they're going to pounce on that. So, like you said, it's good to see Noonan kind of stabilize the crease for now. Kakkonen's with the Eagles doing some recovery from an injury. And yeah, I think between the 3 goalies they have, they're going to run some type of system. I do almost wonder, I don't know what your guys' thoughts on this would be. Does McFarland and Bednar look to do what Toronto did last year with Samsonov with Georgiev? And because I don't know if a team's going to claim him right now with his cap hit and his current play, pass him through waivers to the Eagles for about a month or two and just let him get some starts down there and get his confidence back up a bit once Kakkonen's ready, and just run Kakkonen and Noonan for about a month. I don't know what your guys' thoughts is on that, but
I'm not against it. I could see the waiver thing going either way. Like, I think given his numbers to start the season and like you said, his contract, I don't think anybody would pick him up. But I also wouldn't be surprised just because he is, I guess, a fringe starter in the league.
I guess when you go to that, Trav, he does only have the one more year left on his contract. And again, it's what, 3.5 million. So there is probably teams out there in goalie trouble worse than the Avs that could maybe take a swing on him just because. But yeah, I don't know. Like, Justin, do you have anything to add on to that or say on that?
No, I mean, at this point, I feel like if they were to seriously consider putting him on waivers, they probably have another plan, sort of maybe not in place, but they're confident. They're like, well, if he gets picked up and, Kakinen doesn't work out, we'll pull the trigger on something else. So as a fan, I'm really not too worried about losing him, just because this management group has shown that if they need to do a fix, they'll do one. Like, they're not really married to too many of these short-term, I guess, pieces. So I'm fine with it if that's what they want to do. I don't know right now if he get picked up just because everyone's so tight to the cap. But I mean, stranger things has happened too. But yeah, I don't know. He needs to play, but it's not right now with the Avs because you can't have him go in there and have a stinker or two while they're starting to get hot. Their lineup starting to play well together. Like, it's a pretty mangled lineup. So it took a few games for them to get comfortable with all the, call ups pretty much. So Taves was out for a bit. So they're just starting to kind of get into a bit of a groove, like 7 games in, right?
Yeah, we'll touch on the lineup here in a bit, but you brought up the front office's willingness to pull the trigger. I mean, we saw the tweet go around that the Avs have interest. I mean, Elliot Friedman said it on 32 Thoughts, I think. The Avs have shown interest in Blackwood. There's always the rumblings of John Gibson. So I think McFarland's probably working the phones and just testing the waters to see what the market is like for goalies out there across the league, just in case he does need to make that move. But again, Noonan right now has kind of stabilized things. So
Just while you mentioned John Gibson there, what what are we on here? Like year 10 of him being swirled around trade rumors? The guys said he wants out like 8 times over. I'm kind of sick of John Gibson being a possibility of a trade when the guy has been the centerpiece of a trade rumor and saying he wants out for the last fucking decade. I don't know. It's just getting old, man.
he like signed his extension, and then like a half season into that extension is when the Ducks just completely bomb themselves and have said we're going full rebuild. And yeah, ever since he's like, I'm not staying for a rebuild, and then he's like, oh, maybe there is promise, and it's just between that and his health. Yeah, it's been a shit show surrounding Gibson and if he's staying or if he's going with the Ducks or not here. So
like there's guys that go through all these trade rumors and then either eventually later than sooner get traded or eventually come to terms on a contract agreement. Like you think like Jack Eichel or whatever, all the things in Buffalo that got dragged out with him and then he finally got traded. Well, with Gibson it's just never ending. Like
Matthew Shane in Colorado is a great example too.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, with Gibson, it's just like, I don't know, beating the dead horse almost.
It almost seems.
I feel like this year might be different because they finally have stability back there with a young guy in Dostal who's, hasn't had a lot of time in the league, but he's really starting to show out well. Like last year he was okay, considering how bad the Ducks were. He had that great world championship and he's been pretty good to start the year. So I agree with Trav. It feels like it's been a decade and it's been dragging on forever. And, it's getting to a point where his contract is getting a little lower in terms of like length, that they might be able to like be better with being like, okay, well, we'll hold enough money to just kind of make this work and get him, out of there.
It's 1-2. Last year was kind of the whole thing of, okay, we're gonna run Gibson, Dostal, and just have Dostal learn from them and just get things moving and ready for moving on from Gibson eventually. Dostal obviously didn't have the greatest, like maybe didn't show the Ducks exactly what they wanted, but he turned it around at the World Championship, like you said, Justin. And as for like youth, they picked up Reimer on waivers earlier this year. And if they're moving out a contract like Gibson and if they're not bringing back a goalie, I'm sure they could throw like a 4th or 5th round pick to Detroit for one of their million NHL goalies that they have under contract. But like, just to clarify, like, yeah, Gibson's 2 more seasons after this season with a $6.4 million cap hit. Just so like we know where everything stands on that. Like, again, we're going to touch on goalie contracts here later in the show, but if he's healthy, Gibson lives up to that contract easily, but his health has been such an issue recently that it is hard for maybe teams to pay the price that Verbeek and the Ducks might be asking for him. So I think that's just a situation as Gibson gets back to playing and gets back on the ice that we can keep an eye on. But yeah, I agree. All three of us are kind of on the same page. The whole situation just needs to be put to rest here because it's probably, especially around the Ducks room, it's probably not a great vibe having that rumor constantly swirl. But back to the Avs, like obviously the news recently, they sent Cal Ritchie back to the OHL, Oshawa. We've discussed him a bit so far this season, talked about him a lot in our group chat too. Like, first impression thoughts on this. I know you guys each said like you're surprised he kind of didn't go the 9 games or anything, but any quick first impressions on this?
Yeah, I thought earlier in the year, he was going to get the 9 games, but the last few games he's been kind of working his way down the depth chart a little bit. I don't know how much fault of that is his own. Bednar kept that line of him, Kelly, and Wood out, and I'm not much of a advanced analytics guy, but just from the eye test watching, like their Corsi must have been horrid because they really didn't spend much time in the offensive zone at all. They always seem kind of hemmed in to their own zone. And, I think he had 2 or 3 shifts that second half of the Kraken game. So I think at this point, instead of just having him up here, you might as well just send him back, get his reps in junior, kind of get ready for the World Juniors and see what he's got at the end of the year with the Eagles. But you can't really have him playing not even 9 minutes a night on your third line. So you might as well just cut it because that's a spot that can be filled with somebody from the Eagles at this point.
I wonder too if the injuries have played a factor in this because, like you said, Kelly and Wood as your line mates for a guy that's in his draft year was pegged as a guy that just made skilled players better. If Colorado had a healthy lineup this year, I bet you Ritchie probably sticks out the whole year because he has 1 or 2 out of the 3 of Lehkonen, Drouin, Colton, possibly a guy like Landeskog or even Nuke down with him on that third line. Like, if Colorado's healthy, like their top 9 would be unreal, but injuries obviously play a factor in this. And it's 1-2 where he's going back to the Oshawa Generals of the O, and they've had a slow start, but man, there's a lot of talent on that team, and they're hoping for another deep playoff run, which again will be good for Ritchie. But like Trav, is this one a situation though too where the Avs have finally maybe done right by a developing player and said you've earned the spot, and then basically said you're still not ready though. Go work on X, Y, and Z, and next year we expect you to kind of grab the 3C role almost.
Yeah, for sure. They don't need him right now. Where his game is at. Being I mean, you guys have already said it, but like being as young as he is, the best thing for him right now is to return to the O on a stacked Generals team. That's probably going to be in contention for a member this year. Play at the World Juniors. That's always a great developmental piece for anybody that gets the chance to come back next year bigger, better, and stronger. That's just simple as that.
And kind of a nice segue into our next topic here. Like him coming in next year will work perfect because the Avs are going to be adding a Mikko Rantanen extension onto their cap hit next year, which I don't know, boy. Like the Rantanen's always a player that seems so polarizing in Colorado. He has the skill of a top 5 winger in the league, and yet at times he's invisible on the ice. Like, what are we thinking like for his extension here? And I'm even going to parlay this into how much of a Rantanen extension is connected to maybe what happens with Mitch Marner in Toronto.
This one's tough because I'm not sure. I see a lot of correlations between these two players in terms of that because, they're coming up at the same time. They're top line wingers, put up a lot of points. Rantanen has a bit more of a profile for playoff scoring. He scores more like Marner probably, but they put up the same amount of points, right? So, but I don't know how much it changes with Rantanen having Draisaitl's agent and this kind of whole thing, because it sounded like in the summer it was going to get close. It was close and probably going to get done shortly, and then all of a sudden it just kind of disappeared, and now they don't seem close at all. I think Colorado's kind of balking at going over McKinnon's contract with him. And that one's tough. I wouldn't give him more than 12.6. I don't think, just because you've got a Makar extension coming up and you just give him a blank check. So this one's tough. I want him back. It's just how much higher can you go with him, considering you don't know if you're going to get a $7 million cap hit in Landeskog back either. That's another one that it's really tough for the Avs to kind of see through this salary commitment.
I almost wonder then, like, bring up Landeskog, if McFarland and the Avs are waiting to see more what Landeskog's timeline's like and what he looks like if he ever does return before they make a commitment to Mikko. That's at least my thought on that one. And at least for the Makar extension, like they still have 2 more years after this season with him. So by the time he's up, the cap's going to be 100 mil or above. So you're very comfortable probably giving him just $17 million a year to anchor that blue line for the rest of his career. So, Trav, what's your whole thought though on like Rantanen, and even like again, we're all 3 of us are in Ontario here. What's your thought on Marner? Because we obviously hear lots of news on him too.
Like in terms of a contract status, you mean? Like, what do I think he should make, or what do I just
contract? Just like just everything.
maybe this is an unpopular opinion. I think anything north of about $8.5 million for Marner is an overpayment. A lot of people would probably disagree with that, but until you're seeing consistent, until you're until you're seeing consistent results in the postseason, Marner's for the most part a regular season player. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just not buying into Marner being the money that Matthews and Nylander have. That's just my take on it. I think, I don't know. To me, it's Marner's situation seems like one where all the rumors that have flown about him getting moved and getting shipped out, and especially all the stuff over this past summer, I think he is going to sign there, and I think he's going to remain with the Leafs and ride this out with Nylander and Matthews until the late in their careers. But yeah, I mean, for me personally, I think anything north of 8.5 is an overpayment. And yeah, maybe that's bold, but I know that there is people out there. I've talked to people out there that do agree with me.
I kind of stay tuned into a lot of certain Leaf podcasts just because of all the drama that follows when you listen to Leaf fans. It's great entertainment, but there's a lot of Leaf fans that don't want, like, basically want Marner to take about $1 million or $2 million pay cut, puts him right in that 8.5. And I think it is one where Willie's, like, Nylander's breakout last year really set a different bar, and unless Marner can match it, then yeah, like, the Leafs can basically say, you haven't proven to be this. You never really lived up to your $10 million contract. You haven't proven that you step up in any which way or form. And we're not running three guys making like over 10 million again. So you're either taking a pay cut from us to stay here or see ya.
Well, the thing about Marner too, talking about guys that are a little bit smaller in the league. Don't get me wrong, Marner is a talented hockey player. He's got great vision, probably one of the better playmakers in the league. But like he's not Patrick Kane. And I'm not saying that Marner's got to go in and mix it up every shift in the corner, because obviously Kane wasn't really known for that either. But, Kane fared out through some of those grueling series earlier in the 2010s against the Kings, against the Blues. He's still a highly impactful player when the going gets tough. Like, he's a large part of the reason why the Hawks won 3 cups in 6 years. When the going gets tough, Marner's going the other direction. That's a huge thing for me. Why I wouldn't give him the money that he probably wants.
That's why I kind of compare Marner Rantanen, because that's what's infuriating about Rantanen at times is when teams really play strong defense, box out hockey. Rantanen at 6'4" should just love that challenge to plow through and bully his way to the net. Instead, a lot of times he's like, just does a little cutback and says, nope. He still makes an impact on the ice, but it's infuriating when he's 6'4" and doesn't want to do that.
Rantanen's dwindles down to want, though. When he wants to, he can be that player.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But that's not every night, which is frustrating to watch. But when he's on, and he in all elements of the game. But that's just, unfortunately, it's not 100% of the time.
Yeah. But like, you bringing
up, what was
that,
JC?
I said it just needs to be more. Like he needs to be on more than he is.
And that's maybe where a lot of Colorado fans have an issue with him if he is asking. I haven't seen anything of his contract like requests, but like if he is asking for more than McKinnon, that's where some of the issue comes in. Is if the team's gonna pay you that, you got to have more of that urgency in your game to kind of match that contract then. But
as far as my number on Rantanen goes, I think anything north of 12 is an overpayment. My personal number would be like 11 and a half. And I think anything under 11 is almost a steal. I think that's just me. That's just my.
I don't think he's
hot
making
take on
anything
that,
less
on
than
that
11.
situation. No, that's what I mean. Anything I think less than 11 is probably a steal for what he's done for this team.
Like, but Trav, you brought it up, Patty Kane, like, and how he was so effective throughout all those series in the playoffs. You just watched him though. He was smart about how he attacked the middle of the ice. Like, he was never afraid of it. He was just smart when he did it. Whereas Rantanen doesn't always want to do it, and Marner just completely says no to it. So that's kind of my take on those three in terms of playoff success, is just how they how they attack the middle of the ice and their want to. But as for Rantanen's contract, like, I think he's probably going to come somewhere just north of Panarin. Is probably like the best contract league comparable. And I know I'm going to completely contradict myself after saying that later in the episode here, but like, it's going to be, 11, anywhere from 11.5 to 12 million, I think. Maybe just a smidge over 12, but definitely one though with Rantanen that I think if the Avs go into the playoffs and Rantanen all of a sudden takes over like in the playoffs, then you start having a different conversation, because as much as players don't get paid in the playoffs, and it really has no effect on the salary cap, but that seems to always be the measuring stick of how guys get paid, is what do you do for us once we get to the playoffs? Especially when you're talking about guys that are paid north of 10 million, because those are the guys that you expect to drag you through the playoffs. 25 NHL seasons fully begun. Whether it's the sound of opening puck drop, skates carving up the ice, or that ping as your team goes bar down for a game winner, you can make the memories and catch all those sounds with Gametime. Gametime's game picks section on their website has now offered better curating to everyone's ideal ticket situation, whether it's for live sports, concerts, comedy shows, theater shows, whatever it is, Gametime has you covered. Seat viewing allows you to view what you're going to see from your seat before you even go. Along with Gametime's low price guaranteed, you'll always make sure to get the lowest price on tickets, or you'll get 110% of your money back. So make sure to take the guesswork out of tickets with Gametime's picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code THPN for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. The puck is down and the 24-25 season is underway, which means the quest for the Stanley Cup starts now. Get in on all the action at Draftkings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook betting partner of the NHL. Whether you're a first-time bettor just looking for a simple pick team to win, or whether you're a seasoned bettor looking to do parlays and up your game, you get it all done at DraftKings Sportsbook app. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice.
Sticking with contracts this episode, let's move into goalie contracts here, guys. And Ottinger signed an extension in Dallas. And he's in and around that Swayman, the Allmark, the Hellebuck kind of extension that these guys have all signed within the last few months of each other. What's our and then you hear all the stories of Shesterkin in New York wanting like $12 million. What's the whole thought? What's our feelings here on how the goalie market has kind of played out early this season for some of the top young goalies, almost taking less or accepting a little less, maybe just to have security? Or are they just letting teams kind of bully them a little because goaltending position is a little volatile?
I hate talking about goaltending because it's just so foreign to me. But I think like those deals that got done with Sway, Hellebuck, Saros, Allmark, I think those are all really good deals for both the team and player. $8 million is a lot of money for one goalie. Bob makes 10. He's proven that he's if he backstops you to 2 Stanley Cup finals and 1 cup, I have a hard time arguing with somebody that doesn't think that that's worth it. I think out of all those deals, I think that Ottinger one might be the best just because he's still fairly young. He's good. That team, they're really good at with their cap. They haven't gone overboard with paying anybody too much money. He's proven that he's a good goalie in both situations, regular season and playoffs. But I don't know about you guys, but I have a hard time thinking about committing to a goalie for over 10 million, over 8 to 9 million, let alone over 10 or 11 million. There's a lot of look what the Avs, look at the Knights, the Avs,
the Leafs this season.
What's that?
Toronto this season.
Toronto,
they only have $4 million tied up in goaltending.
Yeah, I was kind of gonna try to think back in time, but the other 2 recent cup winners other than the Knights and the Avs are Florida and Tampa. They both pay their goalies pretty heavily, but the Knights and the Avs had no problem paying a guy $3.5-4 million to backstop you. It's just playing good defensively around him and getting a save, right? But there is a premium for paying a goalie like that. I'm not sure I really would ever want, say, the Avs to be that team because I think they're too good that they don't really need to have that. So I'd kill for that right now over Gorgiev, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead, Trev.
Oh, I was just going to kind of add to JC's point there about goaltenders in around the 8 to 10 mil mark. I have a tough time with almost anybody, skaters or goaltenders, north of 10. And just because, I don't know, I guess I'm still in the mindset of a lower cap. I keep forgetting that the cap is increasing, so it's these players are, I guess, kind of eligible to make more without the team kind of screwing themselves. But yeah, I'm in the same boat. Yeah, I like just it's really got to be worth it for anybody to be in the 10 mil and north mark.
So we'll come back to the goalies here in a bit, but like let's go off on a tangent with kind of the contract and the salary cap and all that here. It's obviously hockey is so different than the other four major sports in North America between football, basketball, and baseball. Basketball is one, clearly you pay one or two guys a bucket load of money and they can carry you to a championship. Football seems to be like football and baseball, though, are a little more comparable in terms of how you pay guys because it's certain positions are so valued and then everything else, it's so much. That's where the analytics, the bargain bin, and just your development comes in. And then you get into, but then you start getting into how do you compare, like, what is it? Like, obviously, your number one center, those guys are kind of your quarterback, your pitchers, your like all-star hitters in baseball and football. Your number one D, kind of the same thing. But and Justin, you'll probably follow this a little bit better because you're into football more. Like, is goaltending? A lot of people want to put goaltending on the same path as a quarterback in football, where if you don't have a great goaltender, it's very hard to win. If you don't have a great quarterback, it's hard to win. Obviously, there is examples of both happening, but it's also one too where for years everyone said in football you needed like running backs were this premium thing that you needed. Everyone paid out of their ass for a running back, and now all of a sudden teams are just going through running backs like, no, we'll pay you $2 million just to run the ball for us a few times. We don't need you. Like, is it kind of that in hockey where some teams think of goaltending as this holy grail quarterback, like you're the savior position, and other teams are just like, yeah, we'll figure it out. It's important, but we can duct tape over it.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty decent comparison just because, I don't know, like looking at football recently, like you're right, like teams aren't really willing to pay that sort of position a lot. I would say having one or two really good defensive players in football is way more important than having that. Where I would compare that in the NHL status, I'm not too sure because all those positions have kind of been taken up. But it's so weird though, just trying to think of like paying a goalie because like that's like kind of like the one thing where like it's a copycat league, right? We haven't really been able to do that at the goalie position because of what I said kind of a few minutes ago, that every team that's won it, any team that's really had success recently has kind of been it's been flip-flop. Like the Stanley Cup Finals last year was, Florida and Edmonton, league average kind of goalie and sort of in the salary range too. And then you have Florida that, they're one of their most expensive paid players. So it's so weird. And it's such a difficult kind of position and topic to kind of wrap your head around for me anyways. I have a hard time kind of thinking just kind of how to compare where a goalie ranks in that sort of kind of realm that you're talking about.
That's yeah. And kind of like I even went off on a tangent on myself. Where I kind of wanted to go with a lot of that is how those leagues also have, because Trav, you brought up the salary cap. The NHL is a hard cap, whereas all those other leagues are soft cap, no cap, or they're a luxury tax league. So it's so much easier for teams to just dish out big contracts to guys because there's not as much penalty if it doesn't work out. So, like, Travis, is this where the hard cap of the NHL really starts to play into effect, even though it is going up significantly here in the near future? Is it one where because GMs have to be so mindful of that hard cap, they're so scared to pull the trigger on a lot of guys?
I think so. Yeah.
Mind you, just wait. They're scared to pull the trigger on guys unless it's July 1st. Because then they just seem to go gun happy.
Yeah. 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 It's a good point. Yeah. Like I think that our hard cap definitely kind of takes a lot into consideration when you're kind of pulling trigger on a guy. I think like a lot of what we're seeing now that we've kind of talked about in previous episodes is the young guns kind of just getting the deal off of a somewhat respectable start to their career. I guess maybe because that like they haven't hit their ceiling yet, whereas a guy that's at his ceiling to throw the bag at him and then watch that come back and bite you when you're fighting against the cap, 3 or 4 years down the road. And, so and so is a big part of your cap hit. I think that's maybe why you're seeing now like these young guys getting their payday. And I don't necessarily disagree with it. It's just one that over time we're going to see if that's working out.
You brought up you're paying guys when they're at their ceiling, at their peak, and then you get them on the downhill slope. Is this maybe one where GM should start being a little smarter, and even players can maybe start using this to their effect of use these 3, 4, 5 year length deals to maximize everything? Teams maximize that short window of length where they know a guy's going to be really good. Players can maximize their earnings if they perform those 3 years. It's like, okay, I just did it here. I'm going to do it again for another 2 or 3 years. So I'm going to asked for more money. Like, is that maybe something where we might see the NHL shift to? And not, obviously teams want those guys locked up, but at times when you're getting into this Shesterkin situation of a 26, 27-year-old, maybe it is best for everyone involved. Just look at a 3 or 4 year deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I love the idea of 3 to 5 year deals. I think there's far too many 8-year deals in the league. The perfect example would be Anaheim's contract with Zegras last year. Sort of a bridge deal. Like, hey, like, the talent level's there, but we kind of gotta see what you've got in stock for us before we just throw the bag at you. I think more teams should be, even for top end guys and guys looking to get the payday, like Shesterkin, a 3 to 5 year deal rather than a whopping 8 and a big huge fucking number. I don't see any downside to it really, but that's just me.
No. And it's like,
yeah, I mean, yeah, you're going to be visiting contract talks sooner than later again, obviously 3 to 4 years sooner, but that, I don't know, just that is what it is. I think I personally would rather have a sooner contract talk again than be sewered halfway through an 8-year. That's my take on it.
yeah, from the team's perspective and from player perspective, NHL contracts are all guaranteed. So, for those 3 to 4 to 5 years, you're guaranteed to get that money. So if you do suffer an injury, you're like, okay, at least I know I have this. I may just have to take a year or two to take some, like what I was getting paid, take a cut on that, and just build my reputation back up to show I can still do it and try to get another 4 or 5 year deal that can make me the bag again. And that's it. I think it's still that old style of hockey of lock them up so that whatever happens, it doesn't affect, like there's such little negative effect on it all. And it just seems that I don't know, like we've seen it here, and you see it here in Toronto a lot. Austin Matthews has done it so far. He's done a 5, and his recent one now is a 4-year contract. So maybe it is one. Jason Robertson's done it in Dallas. He did a 4-year deal out of his entry level. It might be something that teams start to visit more. But again, until GMs actually start to do it, because like you said, Justin, copycat league, once there's success of it, then teams will start to really do it. Until then, GMs are probably going to want to lock everyone up for an 8-year deal, especially their star players.
It's so convenient for guys that, and that are like 21, 22 to take that 4 or 5 year deal, like Matthews, like who else did it? Makar did it. Like Rantanen kind of did it too. Like he only signed I think it was a 5 or a 6 year deal, because then you're still right in the middle of your prime to be like, well, now I can get like an 8-year deal at, at an even higher number. So you got 13, 14 years of basically kind of getting the max that you can for kind of that year range, right?
Like, obviously, there's certain guys that a team will give them whatever, like give them the blank check and say, write your number and tell us how long you want to stay. Like you said, brought up, Makar was probably one, McDavid, Matthews. But like McKinnon did it too. He did a 6-year deal out of his ELC, and now for a short while he was the highest paid player in the league. So, but to wrap things up, I want to bring it back to what I originally wanted to bring up with a lot of this goalie talk was, is it more beneficial should we be comparing Shesterkin's situation in New York to all the other goalie extensions that have happened? Or, because I've said it on this pod before, is Shesterkin, and a lot of rumors have kind of pointed this, he's attacking it in the way of, I don't care what other guys make. They're not affecting me whatsoever. I am the most important player on this roster. I want to be paid like it.
I like that mindset, but I still think his ask is far too much. But I do like the mindset of I don't care what the other guys make. I'm not fond of like comparing the contracts around the league and like what other goaltenders are making and stuff, like to each their own sort of thing. But I do think turning down 11 a year is wild. But anyways,
again, like everyone's situation is unique, but the fact that teams go and say, well, this goalie signed for this or this player signed for this and your guys' numbers are comparable, it's one. Bring it back to the Rantanen and Marner situation. Right now, Marner's the 3rd most important forward on the Leafs, whereas Rantanen's the 2nd most important forward on the Avs. So when you kind of compare those two, it's okay, yeah, Rantanen probably should be getting paid a little more because in Colorado's system, he is that much more valuable. Whereas when you go look at a lot of other teams, and obviously this is where July 1 really sewers teams, because they see a weakness in their team. They don't care about how it hurts their internal structure of cap. They just throw money at guys. But it's still one where teams should almost take, instead of, and I think Tampa's done this to a great extent for so long, they basically said, Stamkos took this much at his prime, Kucherov took this much, and then you base everyone off of that. Like, okay, you're 90% of what Kucherov's value is to us, so you're just a smidge under him. And that's how Tampa kind of did their internal cap. That's how a lot of GMs should probably do it, is basically say, okay, who's our measuring sticks? Who's our measuring stick players here? Like, who's the 1, 2, 3 guys that we're going to say, like, this is their team. This is how everything's going to go. And then every other contract you sign after that is measured compared to their value on those 2 or 3 guys. Like, am I out to lunch thinking this, boys, or like, do you guys kind of agree with my line of thinking here?
Yeah, I agree with it. When I saw the outline and Shesterkin, I wanted to like kind of dig in to see like kind of where he would compare, maybe not so much skill wise, but like where he kind of wants to set the bar. And it really seems like, he kind of wants to kind of set the bar like Carey Price did, right? Back in, what was it, 2017, 2018? I think the contract kicked in the year after. So I just kind of did some comparables on his like Carey Price's contract at the time compared to like maybe what Shesterkin's would be. And Price took up around 13% of the cap at the time. So if Shesterkin did that next year, he would round out to about $12.2 million, which I don't know. It kind of sounds like is where he wants to head, sort of more or less. I'm not saying I agree, or I'm not saying he's worth it or he's not worth it, but do you think he's like as important to the Rangers as Price was to the Habs back then? Or because Price was already very more well established. He had played a lot of years. Like Shesterkin's going to be 29 at the end of December. And, he hasn't been in the NHL that long, but he's been pretty vital to this Rangers team. The fact, making it to 2 or 3 Western Conference finals here in the past couple of years.
You go back and watch last year's playoffs, the Rangers probably don't get past the Hurricanes without Shesterkin, because there was times where the Hurricanes were just hemmed the Rangers in their own zone. Between that and the Hurricanes not getting their great goaltending. And you look at the Florida series there in the Eastern Conference Finals, Florida should have really swept that series based on how the Rangers played. Like, Florida dummied them, and if it wasn't for Shesterkin just allowing the Rangers to have opportunities to win games 1 and 2, it probably would have been a sweep. There is enough evidence, I think, going back where Shesterkin can point to and say, like, I've bailed this team out of this. I've helped this team reach this. If it wasn't for me, like, name another goalie in the league that would do that for this roster, kind of thing. That's where I think Shesterkin's coming from for a lot of his.
Yeah.
But I like you bringing up the percentage of the cap, because I think that's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Is how, forget what a guy makes. A lot of fans, when they complain about players' contracts, is, okay, well, what percentage of your team's cap hit does he take up? And then compare his stats to that. Like, again, using a lot of Toronto on this one, but John Tavares, his $11 million, like right now, he's 8% of the cap or something like that. 1188. I don't know. I'm not doing mental math right now in my head. It's too late. But it was one where at the start, he performed admirably to the contract. You knew as it aged, it was going to be poor. But overall, he probably performed up to the percentage of the cap hit that he was given. And unfortunately, hockey's a sport where you need to allocate like 23 different players into that percentage. So it's so hard to really give guys their proper dues, because McKinnon and Makar and McDavid and Matthews, those guys are always going to be underpaid. But it's just one where I think the conversation of around contracts just needs to change. And it just shows that so much of us, the fan bases, lack the knowledge of how the NHL structured their contracts and their salary cap and the CBA and all that. And obviously that's just a whole nother can of worms to open, but that's just how I see the whole situation. But you guys got anything to add here before we wrap things up?
No, I don't think that's pretty much it.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Obviously, a later week recording this week, but we'll be back next week to midweek recording Tuesday night and then get her up for you Wednesday. We'll see what happens. Let's see if the Avs can go on like a 10-game win streak here, because right now they seem to be playing pretty good hockey and it's just fun. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that's happened we didn't get to. Probably touch on that next week, but and thanks for tuning in to Snapping It Around. Catch you all next week.